Bayi Ajaib would be in The Incredibles 2 if it were a horror movie about a baby who just so happens to be possessed. For the most part, I was laughing aloud at this ridiculously camp Indonesian version of an ancient cultural classic, and for the other, I was writhing in disgust. I had no idea what Bayi Ajaib was about when I initially sat down to watch it, but I was eager to learn more about Indonesian culture and the rural way of life. That soon gave way to a desire to change to the Discovery Channel and cease watching this terrifying movie. And I say that not to allude to the film's horrors, but rather to highlight how startlingly funny the whole thing is. There exist. Overall, this movie is based on a newly rich and recently married man's comfortable life threatens to crumble when his infant child is possessed by an unholy spirit with a grudge. Bayi Ajaib follows a greedy man named Kosim, who becomes affluent after finding gold in a water body somewhere in remote Indonesia. He moves back home to Hirupbagja and marries the love of his life, but he becomes exploitative after getting everything he wants. Soon, his beautiful wife Laris gets pregnant, and Kosim hopes for a son, but on the day of an eclipse, Laris gets lost in the forest and something unthinkable happens. An evil man, Dorman, who is greedier than Kosim and drowning in poverty, needs a vessel to bring back his Portuguese grandfather to life so that he can be rich. He decides to use Kosim and Laris' unborn child to do so, and he leaves Laris to fall into his grave for a terrible fate. After that, things started to get weird for the newlywed couple. As a concept, Bayi Ajaib makes sense, especially with the cultural context making it interesting for an outsider to the culture, but it follows common Western tropes, uses relentless jump scares, and most importantly, uses gore that seemingly comes out of nowhere to scare the viewer, but the practical effects, unflattering CGI, and blood spatters just look overused and make the film predictable. Given that Bayi Ajaib is a remake, modern concepts may have been incorporated into the classic plot, particularly in relation to the SA, which I felt was completely superfluous and turned me off the movie. It was wonderful to see the Indonesian countryside, but the characters may have been more fulfilled if some other facets of rural life had also been portrayed. We could draw comparisons between Bayi Ajaib and the most recent Evil Dead movie, but the main issue is that it falls short of being an entirely satisfying watch. Rather, the elderly man-headed infant leaves us with a bad taste in our mouths. In particular, the film's opening horror scene is ludicrously silly. As Kosim, who is kind to his family but cruel to his employees, Vino G, Bastian excels. It is an intriguing paradox because as the movie goes on, we get to see more of his tender side as he tends to his wife and kid Desy, but he also becomes angrier and more avaricious. When Sara Fajira plays Laris, she convincingly conveys her fear, whether it is from giving birth or her son's demonic possession. However, because he does not have a story arc of any type, the antagonist Dorman appears little in the movie, at least not in my opinion. The greedy man receives all the money he requires, yet still. Bayi Ajaib is definitely huge in the home country, as the movie ends with a foot in the door, leaving it wide open for sequels. All in all, there is a theatrical quality to this film. It feels like a horror adventure in that the era is both vague and well-known. Additionally, as is customary with folklore and fairy tales, there are hints of both religion and superstition. Its advantage is that the playtime is just over an hour and a half. I found myself both enjoying this and feeling that it was a bit too much. Maybe that's why I'm left with the notion that people will probably enjoy this and take it all in, or this will be lost on them. Personally, I was a little bit of both. I loved the cackling villains and the old baby, as this reminded me of the wacky Sam Raimi vibe that I love. In Bayi Ajaib, writer Alam Studio wrote the screenplay and filmmaker Rako Prijanto directed it. Although I do not think I have seen any of their earlier work, this one is of excellent quality. Summary: this latest version of Miracle Baby is a horror that succeeds in improving the previous film with a solid story plot and the addition of crucial characters. Several iconic scenes are brought back with more contemporary techniques and the addition of abundant blood splashes. And of course, the baby with the head of the legendary grandfather now appears in an even more sinister form. The classic film Magic Baby, which was produced more than 40 years ago, is indeed a legendary horror which, although it does not have a decent effect compared to today, still feels relevant thanks to the story plot, which is still relate with socio-political conditions in the modern era. Some of the movie's shortcomings, in the author's opinion, were in one of the well-known sequences where the pregnant woman is underexposed on the back. Additionally, the movie lacks the fun factor of the first one and feels overly serious. This movie does not have any of the humorous moments that were previously present in the sequence involving the circumcision.